art really helps to activate our imagination, right? It helps to it actually demonstrates to us, and it can help us explore with things like healing and love and relationship and a world free of oppression could look like, right? Art can call people into account. Art can really move us forward as divine beings, embodied on this particular plane of existence.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi everyone, it's me, Krylios, Team Rayceen Productions MC and producer. And joining me today, as usual, is the legendary Rayceen Pendarvis. Hey Rayceen.
Greetings and salutations all, and we are so honored to be here with the fabulous, the one, the only, Lady Dane. So I'll have her tell you who she is and all the amazing things she does.
Hey. I'm Lady Dane Figueroa Edidi. I am a Black, Nigerian, Cuban, Indigenous, trans woman, performance artist, playwright, choreographer, advocate, author. I've got 13 books published, dramaturg, historian. I already said advocate, I think, yeah. And co-editor of the Black Trans Prayer Book.
Thank you. It's such an honor for us to have you here. And let's talk a little bit about your playwriting. I want to get into that first. Let's cover that. Tell me how you're intersecting identities as well as your intersecting ethnicities, being Cuban, Nigerian, and Native, and all of that together influences your playwriting.
Yeah, so I feel like one thing that I always say, a quick answer to the long, right, is that my plays really center the gaze of Black folks, right, of Black women. And that means Black women like me, right? Black and trans, Black and Latinx, Black and, daughter of an immigrant, Black and, from the ghettos, Black and Native, Black and et cetera. And so I really, I write from not only that perspective, but I write for that gaze. Gaze for anybody out there. Like, why did I say the gaze?
You know the gaze, honey. You know the gaze. Everything's gotta be about us.
And so because of that, actually, I think that my stories become more expansive than if I were writing, as opposed to if I were simply writing for a cisgendered white audience.
And that's important. I feel like whenever you do things, or I read anything by you, or I see you in any piece, I feel like you bring the whole world with you. You encompass the full celebration of what we all are. We are everything. And you are this Renaissance woman who includes everything that she does. You bring the whole world to the stage and you pour it out and lay it out in all of your performances. It's like, whenever I've seen you, it's like, oh my God, you pour so much out and you leave it right there. And the audience is like, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I think for me, right, like art is so deeply spiritual. And I think that it is almost impossible to really separate art from its spiritual roots. And I think that the artist has such a great power and also responsibility, which is that, art really helps to activate our imagination, right? It helps to actually it actually demonstrates to us, and it can help us explore what things like healing and love and relationship and a world free of oppression could look like, right? You know, art can call people into account. Art can really, really move us forward as divine beings, you know, embodied on this particular plane of existence. And so, yeah, so I think that when I'm like, whether I'm acting or I'm writing, I really am honoring that, right? Honoring that this is a vocation, this is a calling, this is a gift that is divine, not simply a job.
Yeah,
how about that?
Tell me how you meld your artistry with your activism. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I try to, you know, I already talked about kind of like, you know, the gaze that I'm writing from and who I'm writing for, right? But also behind the scenes, I'm often like doing a lot of work to cultivate space for folks who I love and who I think need to be in the space, right? For members of my community. And so, my art has given me access to a lot of these spaces, to also say, hey y'all, this is what needs to be happening, this is how you need to change your institution, et cetera, et cetera. And also my art does really, I mean, I think about things like Clytemnestra, my play Clytemnestra, an epic slam poem, where we experience the story of Clytemnestra that is an ancient story that has this very, you know, Black root to it, right? And I write in that Black root, and then it really calls the audience to account, because I think that sometimes, you know, we would watch that story of Clytemnestra. For those who don't know, if you know who Helen of Troy is, Helen of Troy, right, whose face launched 1,000 ships, she had a twin sister who they say was just as beautiful, Clytemnestra. And Clytemnestra, you know, she went through a lot of trials and tribulations, honey, and she married Agamemnon, who was the leader of the Greek force. And Agamemnon sacrificed her daughter in order to get favorable winds for his ships to go to Troy. And so when he got back, she killed him. And baby.
And said, honey, you gotta go, girl. You gotta go.
Baby, she took that axe and she went to work. All right. And so then, you know, in the old patriarchal story, then her son kills her. And so, and he kind of gets off in the old patriarchal version of the story. And in my version of the story, because it was so deeply invested and telling the stories of Black women through cultures, through generations, there is an indictment of the audience at the end. And it says, you know, you have come into this space, you have come to bear witness to this story, you mourn for Clytemnestra, but it is also your choices that make the fate of people like Clytemnestra possible. So a lot of my work is often actually inviting the audience not only into account, right, but also into what healing can look like. So it's like, you know, I think that sometimes, for example, you know, I've choreographed The Color Purple Blot, right? And I think that we go to the show, right, and we cry and we go, oh, everything that Celia went through and these women, Sophia and all of them, right? But there are Celies and Sophias and Shug Averys living right now, right? Yes. And there are people sometimes who go to the audience in the theater who are voting for, or who are corporate CEOs of, or who are on the boards of places, right, that are cultivating practices, legislation, are invested in institutions, or profiting from institutions that actually lead to the oppression of women like the Seeleys of the world.
Tell me something, because you touched on, you said this word a few times and you've touched on it, and I think it's really important, especially for Black people and marginalized people. Tell me how important healing is for marginalized people. Tell me about that.
Oh, I think it is deeply important, because I think that there's that old saying that's like, hurt people, and that's not always true, right? That's not. Sometimes you can be a hurt person and not hurt somebody else. Because
like sometimes, bitch, I can be hurt, but I don't want to hurt nobody else, girl.
Right.
Okay, all right, let's be clear. But I think that as we talk about this country that we live in, especially like given everything that's happened in 2020, so many people see, I call him the orange troglodyte in the White House, right? They see him as the cause, right? Oh God, all this division. But it's like, no, actually, colonization is the root of everything that's happening. White supremacy is the root. Right. Anti-Blackness is the root, transphobia and homophobia, because really from colonization, as we see it here in this modern age, colonization is really the birthplace. It is the father of white supremacy and anti-Blackness and capitalism and transphobia and homophobia. And because that is the truth, that means that the violence, right, that these systems enact on us are deeply embedded in the modern fabric of the world in so many places, because almost every place in the world has been touched by white supremacy and/or imperialism and/or colonization. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I understand, and I had to understand in my life, that in order for me to get to the place of clarity around what it means to love myself, I had to begin a journey of healing that perhaps there are some folks who were never given the opportunity to do. Mm. And so to love my womanhood fully and unashamedly, to love my transness fully and unashamedly, to love my Blackness fully and unashamedly, there was some healing that had to take place from the traumas that happened, that was being carried due to the violence of these systems.
Yeah.
And so I think, and now let me say this, healing is continual. You don't just heal one day and just be like, all right, I got it all figured out, right?
Yeah,
right?
I'm good.
And just walk on your merry way. You are continually in a state of healing. And so I think it's imperative. Yeah.
And that's important. Healing is so important, that it is, and to know that it is an ongoing process. You cannot take care of 40 years of trauma in one night, mm-hmm. or 10 minutes or one session with your therapist. It is an ongoing journey. And as artists who are part of this journey, you help aid in that healing. Mm-hmm. And when I think of you as a young woman who is trailblazed in so many areas. And when you think about some of the work that you've done, how you've broken ground in theater and just kicked doors open in theater, where do you realize how important that is? Or have you, or what are some of those accomplishments that you hold very dear to you?
It's so interesting. This might sound weird, but like I have always, if you talk to anyone in my family, right, or anyone who's known me for a very long time, I'm mouthy. When I gotta get loud, I get loud.
We all the same, honey. We all the same. Won't stop this.
And so for me, I think that it stems from like a deep love, and a divine love. And because of that, I'm often not like, oh yes, I did this thing, or oh yes, pat myself on the back, because there's always so much more work to do. So I literally go, okay, well that project is done, and now I got to go over here to this place to also cuss these people out. And then don't worry, because I'm gonna be back to also check up and make sure that you're doing right? So I haven't, I understand, I understand that I am not only the first to do a lot of things, but I've also cultivated, curated, and made sure that the communities that I'm a part of are centered in the spaces that I occupy. But I'm like, okay, the work is the work is being done.
When it comes to you, I see that you are so busy in the work, you don't have time to think about what you've accomplished. You're like, I've done the work, I'm working, and it's an ongoing process. So I don't have really time to breathe in this moment to kind of say, yeah. Okay, what's next? Because in that healing, in art, all of that you're involved in is an ongoing process. So you're just you being the vessel.
Yes, I like that. And Rayceen just said it. Tell me, Lady Dane, what's next? What is next? What's on the horizon for you?
Oh my goodness, what's next? Okay, so I am doing a piece with Baltimore Center Stage. They commissioned me to do a play, which is super exciting. This is my first major commission at a major equity house. So this is super, super exciting. I don't know how much I can talk about the piece, but I do know that it will be a part of my Baltimore cycle of plays. It will be a play that takes place in Baltimore, and that it is a play in which the first act takes place in the 1800s, and that the second act will take place in the late 1940s, early 50s, after World War II, when our Black soldiers returned, and that the one in the 1800s will take place during the Civil War. There was Baltimore. Okay. There was a lot of information about Baltimore's role in the Civil War. And so the play, hopefully, I'm doing a lot of research now, the play will encompass that. And one last thing is that I do know that the play will center a Black trans sex worker. Based on an actual Black trans sex worker from Baltimore. Her name was Mary. And there were records of her being arrested. But she, like Mary Walters, was a Black trans woman who was, an abolitionist for fighting for the rights of Black people back in the 1800s. And so it's fictionalizing her story. It's bringing her story to a stage within the context of this Baltimore cycle. So that's one thing that's next for me. I have a new book coming out called Infrastructure of a Nation, and I wanted it to come out on July 4th, but y'all, I've also learned in this time of 2020, right, to really be like, you know what, I am going to rest in this moment. Yes. And I know that I said that I was going to release my book on July 4th, but you know what, I'm going to sleep. So my book, Infrastructure of a Nation, is going to be coming out at the end of August, beginning of September. And that is really a book that is a critique about the country, right? And then the second half of that book will be, the first half of that book is called A World of Ruin. And the second half of that book is called A World Imagined. And so it invites us, right? It invites us, giving us a moment to really know that we have the right to imagine a world free of oppression for ourselves and for those we love and those in our community. And so I think those are two. I'm working on a documentary with J. Mesa III for the Black Trans Prayer Book. We're raising funds for that. We're trying to raise about $250,000 because we want to be able to pay not only ourselves and our videographer, who's also a Black trans person, but all the contributors, coin, okay?
Yes.
Not just like a $2 stipend, all right?
Yes,
for them to like, because I think so many times in these documentaries, right, like certain folks make documentaries about things, or they invite Black trans people to be a part of documentaries and they don't pay us. So because I understand economic violence is a symptom of colonization and white supremacy, it is important, right, for us to also pay folks. So I think that those are, and at Rep Stage, at the beginning of next year, they are producing, they're doing a world premiere of my piece called Ghostwriter. And so that's a piece that's a part of my Baltimore cycle. The first half takes place in 1920. It's a 2-person show. So they play 2 people in Act 1, and then they play 2 different people in Act 2. The first piece takes place in 1920, right outside of Tulsa. And the second act takes place in Baltimore in 2019.
Wonderful,
so, yeah,
wonderful. Well, you have a lot. You have a lot coming up. You have a lot going on. It is so fabulous to hear. Just let our audience know how they can follow you and keep up with everything that you're doing.
So you can, of course, go to my website. I need to get she updated, but you can go to my website, www.ladydanefe, so F is in Figueroa, E is in Edidi.com, ladydanefe.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Lady Dane Fe. You can follow me on Twitter at the Lady Dane. Those are like Twitter and Instagram are the places. I mean, on Facebook too, but like, I think Facebook is out the window soon. But but also, if anyone, I'm always telling folks, if you think I'm doing great work and you want to donate, honey, you want to send me some reparations, baby,
yes, baby,
you can go ahead and you can Venmo me at Lady Dane. That's my Venmo. My Cash App is at Lady Dane Fe. But also, please pick up my books. And yeah.
Lovely. We love a shameless plug here, and we love you, Lady Dane. We love you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Such a pleasure.
Thank you. I love y'all. So, and I really appreciate, I always, people, Rayceen is one of my aunties. And Rayceen has really, really, really also done so much trailblazing and have cultivated and fought for us to be able to occupy the spaces that we're occupying now. So I deeply appreciate you. Thank you so much. So of course, when you said, come on, be on my show, I said, of course, Auntie Win, right? Girl, I done put on this beat and everything.
Love it.
It came running, honey. So yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And most of all, thank you for watching.